He has just passed his pilot's test. Confidence hits an all-time high, and the data says he is twice as likely to die as the nervous student he once was. You think inexperience is dangerous, but the real threat begins after 100 hours, right when you finally relax. There is a hidden spike in the accident curve, not for beginners, but for those who think they are no longer beginners. Why does discipline vanish just as risks multiply? Welcome to the most lethal phase in aviation, where forgetting what made you safe is the most common and costly mistake. The answer starts with the difference between caution and complacency. A student pilot stands beside the aircraft, checklist in hand. Every motion is deliberate. The pre-flight ritual begins with a walk around the plane, eyes scanning for anything out of place. The checklist is not just a piece of paper, it is a lifeline. Each item is read aloud, each box ticked off with the certainty that missing one could mean disaster. The fuel caps are unscrewed and checked for tightness. The control surfaces are moved, not once but twice, confirming freedom of movement. Tires are pressed with a thumb, searching for the right firmness. A flashlight sweeps under the wings, looking for leaks or loose rivets. The fuel sumps are drained into a clear cup, the liquid held up to the light, searching for water or debris. Even the faintest cloudiness means starting over. Inside the cockpit, the checklist continues. Switches are set exactly as prescribed. The master switch is flicked on, lights checked, then off again. Radios are tuned to the correct frequencies, even if the flight will never leave the pattern. The seatbelt is tugged, tightened, then checked again. Every step is confirmed, out loud or in a whisper. There is no improvisation, no shortcuts. The engine start sequence is followed line by line, the throttle set, the mixture rich, the brakes tested. Only when every item is complete does the student allow the engine to turn over. This is not paranoia, it is discipline, drilled by repetition and reinforced by the constant presence of the instructor. Under supervision, students almost never skip a step. FAA and NTSB data show that student pilots with fewer than 50 hours have nearly perfect checklist compliance. They are watched, corrected, and reminded at every phase. The result is a safety record that outperforms the next several hundred hours of a pilot's career. For the student, fear is functional. It keeps hands steady and eyes sharp. Nothing is assumed, nothing is left to chance. The checklist is more than a procedure, it is a shield, and as long as it is followed, the risk of a fatal mistake stays almost unimaginably low. Every student pilot flies with an invisible shield, the instructor's authority. Before each flight, a certified instructor reviews the weather, inspects the student's preparation, and asks pointed questions about the route and conditions. Nothing happens without that signature. Even a solo flight is not truly solo, it is flown under the weight of an endorsement granted only after the instructor is convinced the student is ready. If the sky looks questionable or the student seems distracted, the flight does not launch. The instructor's veto is absolute. Flight schools build layers of protection around their students. Policies dictate minimum weather standards that are often stricter than federal regulations. Marginal visibility, or low clouds, means the answer is no. A student cannot simply decide to go. Each authorization is documented, with the instructor's initials beside the date and time. Dual controls remain in every training aircraft, a silent reminder that someone else can take over in a heartbeat. The right seat is never empty. Even when the instructor steps out, their judgment lingers in every decision the student makes. This oversight changes the psychology of risk. Students know they are being watched. They anticipate questions about every choice, every checklist item, every deviation from the plan. The possibility of critique keeps their discipline sharp. Mistakes are caught early, often before they become dangerous. If a student forgets to drain the fuel sumps or misses a step in the run-up, the instructor intervenes immediately, sometimes with a gentle correction and sometimes with a hard stop. The lesson is clear: there are no shortcuts. The system does not allow them. Endorsements are not a formality, they are a contract. The instructor assumes legal responsibility for the flight. If something goes wrong, the investigation starts with the person who signed off. This accountability creates a culture where caution is rewarded and bravado is quietly discouraged. For as long as the instructor's hand hovers near the controls, the student's world is bounded by rules and reinforced by constant oversight. But this safety net is temporary. The day will come when the instructor steps away for good, leaving the right seat empty. The shield vanishes, and with it the last external guardrail. From that moment on, every decision belongs to the pilot alone. The handshake with the examiner is still fresh when the pilot walks across the ramp alone. The certificate, crisp and official, sits in a new logbook. The right seat is empty for the first time. There is no instructor watching from beside or behind, just the faint echo of their voice quickly fading. No one asks about the weather briefing, no one checks the seatbelt. The sense of freedom is immediate and intoxicating. Today the pilot decides when to fly, where to go, and how to get there. The checklist, once a sacred script, becomes optional. A glance, a nod, a memory, good enough. The written list stays folded in a pocket, replaced by a mental flow that feels efficient, even professional. The urge to prove something, to fly like a veteran, overrides the habits of caution built over months of training. In the cockpit, the engine start sequence is recalled from memory. The throttle and mixture are set with one hand while the other flips switches by feel. The pre-flight ritual drilled into muscle memory is trimmed. No one interrupts, no one corrects. The silence is liberating and a little dangerous. Small shortcuts slip in almost unnoticed. The pilot skips reading the checklist out loud. The fuel sumps are checked quickly, maybe not at all. The weather looks acceptable, but the briefing is skipped. The urge to get airborne is stronger than the old anxiety. Later, in a diary entry, the new pilot writes about the thrill of flying solo after the check ride. He writes, "Felt like a real pilot today. Didn't need the checklist, I just knew what to do." This is the day discipline begins to erode. The invisible guardrails are gone. The pilot's confidence rises faster than their experience. The risk is not obvious, and that is what makes it so dangerous. The empty right seat is not just a symbol, it is the first test of judgment, and nobody is watching anymore. At 100 hours, something changes in the cockpit. The fear that once kept hands steady is replaced by a new sensation: confidence. The numbers tell a stark story. NTSB and FAA data show the accident rate for general aviation pilots climbs sharply after the check ride, peaking between 100 and 350 total flight hours. In this window, the fatal accident rate can be 2 to 4 times higher than for student pilots. The graph is unmistakable, a steep spike in risk that mirrors the classic Dunning-Kruger curve. Confidence soars, but competence lags far behind. Most pilots in this zone believe they are past the hard part. They have a license, a few dozen solo flights, and a growing sense of mastery. But the data reveals a dangerous gap. Southern Illinois University found that pilots in the bottom quartile of skill routinely rated themselves above average. In real-world flying, this translates to subtle shortcuts and unchecked assumptions. The brain, convinced of its own skill, stops searching for errors. The pilot feels invincible, right as the odds turn against them. Every accident investigator knows the pattern. The logbook reads 150 hours, 220 hours, sometimes 300 hours. The pilot has just enough experience to believe in their abilities, but not enough to recognize the traps. On the exposure-adjusted accident curve, this is the highest risk period of a pilot's entire career. The curve drops off only after 500 hours, when real proficiency finally catches up to confidence. Until then, the cockpit is a laboratory for overconfidence, and the price of a single mistake is measured in lives, not lessons. The question is simple: where are you on the curve? Because the airplane does not care how good you feel. It only responds to what you actually know. A pilot rushes across the tarmac, late for a planned departure. The checklist sits untouched on the seat. This time, the pre-flight is done from memory. The fuel sumps, small drains under each tank, are skipped entirely. Draining the sumps is supposed to catch water or debris in the fuel, the kind of contamination that can stop an engine cold. But the pilot has done this flight a dozen times before, always with a clean sample. Nothing bad has ever happened. Today, the engine starts, runs smooth, and the flight goes off without a hitch. In that moment, the brain learns a dangerous lesson. The skipped step is rewarded with extra time and no consequences. The checklist becomes a formality, not a necessity. The pilot's confidence grows, fed by each shortcut that does not end in disaster. The habit forms quietly. The next flight, the sumps are skipped again. Still nothing. The routine expands, maybe the weather briefing is rushed or the fuel tanks are not topped off. Each time, the lack of punishment cements the idea that these steps are optional. This is how normalization of deviance begins. A single shortcut, taken once, becomes a habit. The risk is not obvious. Water in the fuel is not always there, but when it is, it can choke an engine in seconds. NTSB accident files are filled with cases where a missed sump check led to a forced landing or worse. For the pilot in the moment, the absence of disaster is proof of skill, not luck. The shortcut feels safe until the day it is not. A phone buzzes on the glare shield, lighting up with another message. How close are we? The wedding starts at 2. Passengers are already in the car, bags packed, counting on the pilot to deliver them on time. The weather app shows a ceiling just above minimums, visibility that could go either way. The forecast says marginal, but the group chat is full of encouragement. Someone jokes, "You're the only one who can get us there." The pilot glances at the sky, gray but not impassable. The urge to launch grows stronger with each reminder of the deadline. This is the pressure that rarely appears in accident reports, but drives countless risky departures. The plan was set days ago. The tickets, the hotel, the expectation, none of it cares about the clouds rolling in. In the right seat, an instructor would have called it off. Alone, the pilot weighs the disappointment of friends against the quiet warnings from the forecast. The rational voice says, "Wait it out." But the louder voice says, "I've flown in worse." Text after text, the sense of obligation builds. Passengers talk about missing the rehearsal dinner, the need to be there for family. Someone asks, "Is it really that bad?" The pilot scrolls through radar images, searching for a window, a justification. The decision starts to feel less like a choice and more like a responsibility. The checklist sits untouched as the mental math begins. If we leave now, we can beat the worst of it. If we wait, we'll miss everything. Every rationalization is a brick in the wall between caution and action. The weather isn't perfect, but it isn't terrible. The passengers are counting on this flight. The pilot tells himself, "Just this once, I can handle it." The engine turns over, the deadline wins, the wheels leave the ground with the question still hanging in the air. Was this the right decision, or just the easiest one to justify? A private pilot departs under a low, gray ceiling. The logbook in the wreckage reads 150 hours. 10 minutes after takeoff, the horizon vanishes. The forecast called for marginal conditions, clouds at 1,200 feet and falling visibility, but the decision was made to go. The pilot, flying under visual flight rules, flies into a wall of white. Instrument meteorological conditions, IMC, mean the world outside disappears. No ground, no sky, just a blank canvas. Inside the cockpit, the senses revolt. The inner ear, built for walking, not flying, sends false signals. The pilot feels the aircraft banking left, but the instruments show the wings level. The hands grip tighter, the brain insists on correcting a turn that is not happening. This is spatial disorientation, what pilots call the leans. It is silent, invisible, and deadly. The altimeter drifts. The heading wanders. In less than 60 seconds, the aircraft begins a slow, tightening spiral. The pilot pulls back, trying to climb out of the cloud. The nose rises, speed drops, the stall warning blares. Then the nose drops again. The spiral tightens, airspeed builds, the vertical speed indicator plunges. Ground proximity alarms sound too late. On the ground, investigators piece together the path. Radar shows a steady climb, a turn, then a rapid descent. The last radio call is a confused request for help cut off mid-sentence. The impact site is less than 5 miles from the airport. There is no evidence of engine failure, no sign of a mechanical fault. The cause is written in the logbook, 150 hours. The data matches the pattern seen in dozens of similar crashes. Pilots with just enough experience to launch, not enough to recognize the trap. The accident report lists the probable cause as spatial disorientation after inadvertent flight into instrument meteorological conditions. In plain English, flying visually into clouds, losing control, and never coming out the other side. Right now, pilots with 100 to 350 hours face accident rates up to 4 times higher than student pilots. That fact has been unchanged for decades. Complacency, not complexity, remains aviation's deadliest threat. In the cockpit, humility is not optional. It is survival. The sky does not forgive shortcuts. Every checklist, every deliberate pause is a decision to keep flying tomorrow. Are you willing to question your confidence before the statistics do it for you?